My father sat at the head of the table for 47 years. Not once, not for a hurricane warning, not for a hospital stay, not even for the year the oven caught fire and we ate burnt casserole on the front porch, did Harold Eugene Mitchell miss his seat at the Thanksgiving table. Until this year. And somehow, it took my 8-year-old daughter to make me understand why that empty chair was the most important thing I'd ever have to face. I want to tell you that I handled my father's decline gracefully. I want to tell you I was the kind of daughter who showed up with patience sewn into her pockets, who never cried in the parking lot of the memory care facility, who never gripped the steering wheel on the drive home so hard that her knuckles went white. But I wasn't that daughter, not even close. My name is Carol. I am 53 years old, a retired school teacher, and for the past 2 years, I have been slowly, quietly, invisibly falling apart. Dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 18 months ago, though if I'm being honest with myself, and Thanksgiving has a way of forcing honesty, I knew something was wrong long before any doctor put a name to it. I knew it the Christmas he called me by my mother's name 3 times in one evening and laughed it off as a joke. I knew it the spring he drove to the grocery store and ended up parked outside his old barbershop from 1987, the one that had been a nail salon for 15 years. I knew it the summer he stood in his own kitchen and asked me, very politely, as though I were a stranger who had wandered in off the street, if I could help him find his daughter. His daughter, me. I smiled at him that day. I said, "It's me, Dad, it's Carol." And something flickered behind his eyes, recognition, then confusion, then a kind of quiet embarrassment that broke my heart into pieces so small I'm still finding them on the floor. We moved him into Sunrise Gardens in March. It's a good facility. The staff knows his name and his history and the fact that he likes his coffee with exactly 1.5 sugars and gets agitated if the television is too loud. They are kind people doing hard work, and I am grateful for them every single day. But gratitude and grief can live in the same chest at the same time. I know that now. This Thanksgiving, I did what I always do. I cooked. I cooked because cooking is the thing I know how to do when I don't know what else to do. I made Dad's mother's cornbread stuffing from a recipe card so old the ink has faded to the color of dust. I made the sweet potato casserole with the marshmallows on top because Dad always stole the marshmallows before dinner and then pretended he didn't. I made the cranberry sauce from scratch, the kind with orange zest, because he once told me that canned cranberry sauce was an insult to cranberries everywhere, and he said it so seriously that I laughed for 5 minutes straight. I cooked all of his favorites. I set his place at the table. I put his chair at the head where it always was. And then I sat down with my daughter, Lily, and my husband, Greg, and we passed the dishes around, and I stared at that empty chair, and I felt the particular loneliness of being surrounded by people who love you while still feeling utterly, completely alone. "Mom," Lily said. She's 8, she has her grandfather's eyes, that same steel gray color that looks silver in certain light, and she has his habit of watching people very carefully before she speaks, like she's collecting information, running calculations, arriving at conclusions that adults haven't reached yet. "Mom," she said again. I looked up from my plate. "You should go eat out." The table went quiet. Greg lowered his fork. I blinked at my daughter, certain I had misheard her. "What?" "You should go eat out," she repeated, completely calm, completely certain. "At Sunrise Gardens, with Grandpa Harold, right now." I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Lily, sweetheart, they have their own Thanksgiving dinner there, and Grandpa, he has good days and bad days, and today might not be." "Mom," her voice was so steady, so sure. "When did you last eat Thanksgiving dinner with Grandpa?" And there it was. The question landed on the table between us like something heavy, and I felt it in my sternum, in the back of my throat, in the place behind my eyes where the tears live when I'm trying not to let them out. Last year, Dad had been in a difficult stretch. The doctors had adjusted his medication, and the transition had been hard on him, and I'd visited on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and he hadn't known who I was, and I'd driven home and told myself I would go back on the actual day, and then Lily had a fever, and then Greg's mother called, and then somehow it was Friday, and I was putting away leftovers, and I hadn't gone. The year before that, I had gone. But I'd brought a plate of food from our table and sat with him for 45 minutes and watched him eat and smiled so hard my face hurt, and then driven home and cried for an hour in the driveway. That wasn't Thanksgiving dinner with my father. That was a performance of Thanksgiving dinner. That was me showing up and going through the motions and telling myself it counted when it didn't. My daughter, 8 years old, had seen through all of it. "Go, Mom," Greg said quietly. He was already reaching for my hand. "We'll be here, go." I drove to Sunrise Gardens with a foil-wrapped plate of cornbread stuffing and sweet potato casserole and cranberry sauce on the passenger seat. My hands were steadier than I expected. My heart was not. The woman at the front desk, Maria, who has worked there since the day we moved Dad in and who has never once made me feel like a burden for calling too many times in a single week, looked up when I came in and smiled like she was expecting me. "He's in the dining room," she said. "He had a good morning." I didn't ask what a good morning meant anymore. I had learned that good is relative, that good is a gift, that good can change between one breath and the next, and that the right response to "he had a good morning" is simply "thank you." "Thank you," I said. I found him at a table by the window, the one he preferred because it faced east, and he had spent 60 years waking up early, and he said he liked to watch the light change. He was wearing his blue cardigan, the one I'd bought him 2 Christmases ago, and he was looking out the window with the particular expression he gets sometimes, not vacant, not confused, but somewhere else, somewhere that belongs only to him. I pulled out the chair across from him. He turned, and he looked at me the way he used to look at me when I was a little girl and had done something that made him proud, that full, warm, unguarded look, the one that made me feel like the most important person in any room I'd ever stood in. "Carol," he said. Just my name, just those 2 syllables. But the way he said it, like he was relieved, like he had been waiting, like my name in his mouth was something safe to hold onto, I felt it travel straight through me. "Hi, Dad." I sat down, I set out the food I'd brought, and he looked at it, and something shifted in his face, recognition moving through him slowly, like light through water. "Is that your grandmother's stuffing?" he asked. "Your mother's recipe," I said. "I made it this morning." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You always get the sage right. Your mother could never get the sage right. Don't tell her I said that." "Mom has been gone for 11 years. I didn't correct him. I just smiled and said, "I won't tell her." "We ate together." That's the whole story, really. That's the part that I need you to understand. We just ate. We ate cornbread stuffing and sweet potato casserole and cranberry sauce with orange zest, and Dad stole the marshmallows off the top of the casserole and then looked at me sideways like he was getting away with something. And I laughed, a real laugh, not a performance of a laugh, for the first time in longer than I can remember. He told me about a Thanksgiving when he was 12 years old, and his Uncle Reuben had brought a live turkey to the house as a joke, and nobody had thought to plan past that moment, and the turkey had spent 45 minutes terrorizing the family before being caught in the upstairs bathroom. I had never heard this story. In 53 years of being his daughter, I had never heard this story, and he told it with such delight, such absolute boyish delight, that I had to set down my fork because I was laughing too hard to eat. Then he went quiet for a while. We watched the light change in the east-facing window, that late November light that goes gold and thin before the dark comes. "You know what I'm grateful for," he said finally. "What?" He looked at me, clear-eyed, present here. "You," he said. "I'm grateful for you, every year, every single year of my life." I sat in the parking lot of Sunrise Gardens for a long time before I drove home. Not crying the way I used to cry, that desperate, drowning grief I'd been carrying for 2 years, something different, something that felt strangely like relief, like I had been holding my breath since March and someone had finally told me it was okay to exhale. My daughter sent me a text while I was sitting there. A photo of her and Greg at the Thanksgiving table, grinning, both of them with marshmallows stuck to their faces, a caption that read, "We saved you pie. Grandpa Harold would want you to have pie." 8 years old, she understood something I had spent 2 years refusing to understand. That presence is the whole gift, not the perfect holiday, not the intact memory, not the father who remembers every year in order and every story in full, just the being there, just the sitting down, just the cornbread stuffing and the stolen marshmallows and the story about a turkey in a bathroom that I almost ran out of time to hear. Dad's chair will be at the head of our table next year, I've already decided. But I'll bring his plate to him first, at the window that faces east, while the November light is still gold. Because my 8-year-old daughter looked at an empty chair and understood something a grown woman had to be taught. The table isn't the point, the person is the point. And there is still time, there is still, if you move right now, time.